The 2 Feet on the Ground Gravity Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Chris. Hey, folks, it is Friday. The weekend is upon us, and I'm just excited to lean into the weekend. I have a long weekend. I have today, tomorrow, and Sunday off. I wanted to get on here and do a live podcast production just to spotlight a nonprofit and an event that's coming up here in the Tri-City, Washington State area that's going to be free for law enforcement officers. It's going to be a great event that's geared at the officer and their spouse or their families, and just an opportunity to get some great training and do a better job of taking care of ourselves, taking care of our marriage relationship, and just having great resources to do that. I also want to spotlight some of the guests that we have coming on the Gravity Podcast here pretty soon. So I'm going to tell you about those different guests here in a second. But before I do that, I want to tell you about this free opportunity, this free conference that's coming up, put on by the Behind the Badge Foundation. The Behind the Badge Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit here in Washington State that's been taking care of law enforcement officers and their families for a long time. One of the things they do is when a police officer dies in the line of duty, they support that surviving spouse. And it's just it's something that's impacted me in my life as I watched a law enforcement friend get murdered in the line of duty, and his spouse be taken care of by the Behind the Badge Foundation. Another thing that the Behind the Badge Foundation does is they organize training conferences that is once again free for law enforcement officers and their families. And they're doing that right here in my hometown in Kennewick, Washington, coming up here September 30th, October 1st, and October 2nd. They pay all the costs to bring in remarkable speakers, to bring in remarkable resources, and food. It's an entire weekend that's just an opportunity for law enforcement officers and their spouses to unplug and to listen to folks that have gone through tough things, to listen to some mental health professionals, to hear how can we do a better job of managing the stress of being a law enforcement officer, and how can we do a better job of connecting as spouses. And that's something that Jamie and I are constantly talking about here on the podcast, on the Marriage Monday edition, is how have we approached it? How have we failed? Right? How has Jamie and I failed as spouses, messed up the marriage thing, and then how have we reconciled in order to stay married? So the Behind the Badge Foundation, check them out, behindthebadgefoundation.org. If you're a law enforcement officer or if your spouse is, get on there, check out this upcoming conference, September 30th, October 1st, and October 2nd. Totally free for law enforcement officers and their families. Just a great opportunity to, again, do a better job of taking care of ourselves and taking care of our spouses. Hey, with that, I want to talk about some of the upcoming guests. Jamie and I, if you've watched us for any amount of time, you know that we host this Marriage Monday edition every couple of weeks, where we talk about our marriage, talk about the ways that we've struggled. Here on August 15th, we're actually going to be talking about going to conferences together. We're going to talk a little bit about the Behind the Badge Foundation conference, but we're going to talk about a different conference that we went to that was just focused on marriage. And it was called the Family Life Marriage Conference. And it was just a remarkable opportunity for us to unplug from the daily requirements of life and to really look at our marriage, look at what we were doing well, what we could fix, and then just have some time together. So tune in August 15th to our Marriage Monday edition, and you can hear some of the takeaways that Jamie and I had from attending that conference. However, as you know, I like to interview guests. I like to interview remarkable people that can bring us different perspectives in life. And here on August 10th, the next podcast that's going to air, you're going to be hearing from Thunderbird, U.S. Air Force fighter pilot Michelle Mace Curran. She has some great perspectives from her experience of being a Thunderbird pilot, being a fighter pilot in the United States Air Force. Great timing with Top Gun Maverick coming out. Just an absolutely great interview. A couple weeks later, on August 24th, I'm going to be interviewing Joan Catherine. She's a recent high school graduate, actor. Just a great perspectives from an 18-year-old. I really appreciated hearing some of her takeaways in life. Also coming up is one of my fellow leadership instructors that I teach with, Matt Porter. He's a police officer here in Washington State. Really dialed in on emotional intelligence, great conversations, and just leadership in general. So tune in September 7th for my interview with Matt Porter. And then last but definitely not least, in fact, I just got done with this interview right now, is a gentleman by the name of Pete Early. Pete Early is an accomplished author and investigative reporter. Absolutely loved the interview that I just had with him on a book that he wrote called Crazy, A Father's Search Through America's Mental Health Madness. He had some really, really powerful, uh, just a powerful story of what him and his family went through as his son, who was doing everything right in life, suffered a mental health crisis. So hopefully you can tune in to these different episodes, folks. Just some great things to take away and apply in your own life. But before I disconnect here, I wanted to once again spotlight the Behind the Badge Foundation. Again, this is a free conference that's available to law enforcement officers and their families. It's happening here in Kennewick, Washington, September 30th, October 1st, October 2nd. It's totally free for law enforcement officers and their families. Meals are provided. Great speakers are coming in. Great conversation. I'm super excited about it. Seating is limited. So if you're thinking, hey, me and my spouse may want to go to this, I would sign up right away because the seats might get taken up. Folks, you hear me say this if you've listened to the podcast. We only get to do this life once. So let's go out and take care of the people in our tribe, take care of each other. Take care. God bless.